Good morning. Imene 28 na legislature in Guam is back in session. We continue on second reading file. Next on the agenda is Bill number 279-38 COR by Senator Jesse Lohan. Senator, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, motion to place Bill number 279-38 COR, an act to amend Section 1, Part 1, Chapter 13, Public Law 38-60, relative to travel authorization for the Guam Visitors Bureau, on the only file with the opportunity to discuss.
You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this measure simply returns travel authorization authority back to the Board of Directors, restoring the oversight structure that it has historically existed. Colleagues, I rise today again in support of Bill number 279-38 CR, a straightforward but critically important measure that restores accountability for travel within the Guam Visitors Bureau. This bill does one thing. It gives back the Board of Directors the authority to approve travel, the authority it has always had. This is not a new oversight requirement. It is simply returning the process to how it used to operate, where the board, as stewards of public trust, had the responsibility to ensure that taxpayer funds were used wisely and appropriately. Since the hearing on this bill 2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed multiple trips by the Guam Visitors Bureau personnel to Taiwan, Japan, and San Diego, all in a matter of days. Meanwhile, businesses on our island are closing their doors and residents are feeling the economic squeeze. Taxpayers are rightly asking who is ensuring their money is being spent responsibly. This bill provides that assurance, Mr. Speaker. We are not restricting travel, Mr. Speaker. We are not questioning the importance of international engagement. What we are doing is ensuring that proper oversight, transparency, and accountability. This measure allows the board to review and approve travel as it has done historically, so that every dollar spent is justified and aligned with Guam's priority. When this legislature granted the $10 million to the Guam Visitors Bureau for incentives, we specifically said to the Bureau, you will be held accountable for every cent that we have given you. And if required, again, oversight will be called. And that is exactly what we are doing. We have questions in regards to travel authorities. I attend, if not myself, my chief of staff, attend the meetings. And at times we would ask the board, and even the oversight, we would ask the board chair, did you know about this? No, I didn't. We didn't know about this. All we do is we agree to a blanket budget, not line item budgeting. So this, again, restores the accountability in regards to the travel needs. Mr. Speaker, just the other day, or 2 days ago, I got a courtesy call from one of our airline partners. They'll remain unnamed at this point because I promised that I'll let them make the announcement themselves. They had said, Senator, we're sad to say, but we are going to be discontinuing a route that we just started. We'll be suspending that indefinitely because of the cost of fuel, and our ticket pricing just do not match the passengers' needs at this point. I asked how long you think that'd be. It's indefinite at this point. Fuel prices is just not making it feasible for this route to continue. So that they will be making that announcement probably, if not today, in next day or so. These are the times that we're in, Mr. Speaker. We just want accountability. Again, the need for travel is there. But we want to make sure, and again, we told the Guam Visitors Bureau that they would be held accountable for every single dollar that this legislature had given to them for flight incentives. We got a lot of flack because we could have used that money for something else. And we told them the same thing, that we could have. But we also know that there was a need to do as such. But if the situation calls for such an oversight, then we would do so. The board has been asking as well, Mr. Speaker, in regards to a restructuring, whether or not they are a administrative board, policy board. What are they? They don't know exactly what they are. Or advisory board. We are working on that as well, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues, if you vote against this bill, you're sending a message that accountability is optional and that taxpayer oversight is not a priority. That is not acceptable. This bill is about restoring the system that worked, protecting public trust, and ensuring that the people of Guam know their money is being managed responsibly. I look forward to the discussion and respectfully ask for your support. Also, Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment to this bill which has been uploaded to the drive, and I would like to proffer it at this point.
You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and colleagues, the amendment is on your desk. It's on line 17, page 1. It's to add the bill to read Section C. Travel to promote tourism on Guam, provided that such travel is paid by the Tourist Attraction Fund and is restricted to the Guam Visitors Bureau General Manager or his or her designee, appropriate GVB staff, board members, cultural performers, and village leaders as approved by the striking out General Manager and restoring GVB Board of Directors. And adding on, colleagues, and within 5 working days following the next duly convened meeting of the Board of Directors after completion of such travel, the Guam Visitors Bureau General Manager shall submit a written travel report to the Speaker of this Luptan Guahan. Such report shall include, at a minimum, 1, the scope and purpose of the travel, 2, the key performance indicators, KPIs, utilized to measure the outcomes of the travel, 3, a list of all participants, and 4, the total cost of travel, including airfare, per diem, and any additional expenses. Mr. Speaker, I proffer this amendment to further the accountability of, again, the Guam Visitors Bureau. Again, in my opening, I mentioned that in just 2 weeks since the public hearing, the Guam Visitors Bureau had traveled to Taiwan, Japan, and even sent an entourage to San Diego. If I were anti-travel, I would simply move to ban travel outright. This is not what we're doing here. What I'm saying is this: we must stop treating GVB's funds like an unlimited expense card. If you travel, then show us clearly and transparently why you went, what you sought to accomplish to bring tourism back to Guam. Because while GVB management is globetrotting, the reality in the ground tells a very different story. At least 100 employees at DFS alone, just one of many companies in Tumon, are now attending job fairs. Let it sink in. The workforce behind tourism, the tourism economy, is being displaced, while a select few are afforded the opportunity to travel. And DFS is not alone. Many businesses throughout Tumon are facing the same hardship, and their employees are bearing the brunt of that right now. So now more than ever, with global instability, such as the Iran war and the rising cost of airfare, we have to be responsible. We have to rein in spending. We must refocus our priorities, and most importantly, we must fix Tumon. And the only way we can do this is by being here on Guam, doing the work where it matters the most. And as we speak to Mr. Speaker, you know, we don't know the situation of the airport Lotte, their concession, what's happening over there, whether they're going to stay or not. We are awaiting the information from the airport authority and the governor's office regarding what's going to happen over there. There are a lot of uncertainties, Mr. Speaker, what's happening with our tourism and businesses here in Guam. And so with that, again, this bill is not an anti-travel. It's be accountable for the travel that you do, and what are the outcomes, what are the returnables, what is the yield of your travel. And that is what we made clear when we gave the $10 million incentive to GVB. We were very clear in that point, Mr. Speaker. With that being said, thank you. I look forward to my colleagues supporting this bill, again returning the authority back to our travel authority back to the board of directors. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. First off, on the amendment is proffered. Gentlelady from Jonia, ma'am, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, I'd just like to ask if the sponsor would yield if he's saying that the incentive money that we gave to GVB is being used for this travel instead of incentivizing the airlines.
Ma'am, you want to say that question for the main? This is on the amendment.
But he just said it right now on the amendment. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, well, you opened the door, so you want to go ahead.
I can you, yeah.
Sure.
I would hope not. I surely hope not, Mr. Speaker. You know, the last we heard as well is that, you know, they have not received their monies as well with, I don't know how much they have received at this point. There's conflicting between what DOA has released at this point. But, you know, that being said, every cent that is being spent by GVB, they have to be held accountable for that. So that's what this bill is about, Mr. Speaker. And again, one of the things is the board of directors, again, a lot of times are not informed of trips per se because they don't have the authority to authorize those trips anymore.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I'm glad he clarified because he made it sound earlier like the incentive money that we gave them is being used for this travel that we now want to be accountable for. So I just also, the sponsor has said that the board, or at least one of its members, is saying that, oh, it only approves an overall budget, not a detailed budget, but that is completely within the realm of the board to demand what detail they want in the budget to approve or not approve. And so I just hope that if that is their issue, that they demand to know what part of that budget is going to be used for travel, what part is going to be used for other things, and they can even go down to the detail of what part of that is going to be used to travel to different areas. And all of that can be budgeted out. Of course, there are some things, according to GVB's testimony, that they cannot budget out in advance, that they get invited to kind of on short notice. And so I have no objection to accountability. I think most of these reporting requirements are in our general law for travel and that they are required of everybody under travel. So I have no objection to this amendment that adds just additional reporting requirements, but interestingly, not to the board, but to the legislature. But I have no objection to that.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, any others? Gentleman from Tamuning, sir, you're recognized.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly rise in support of the amendment. If you look at the amendment, it actually is fashioned after what we're currently piloting now in the government, which is performance-based budgeting. And if you look at the key performance indicators there that's noted, it is basically the heart and soul of performance-based budgeting in terms of how it accounts for duties and responsibilities within a budget category, and how a mission is carried out, administratively throughout the divisions of whatever entity is performing these duties and reporting KPIs, key performance indicators. So, and I also like the fact that it comes to the legislature, because I'm sure the Speaker would continue to pass that on to Office of Finance and Budget, which really, is the repository for evaluating that and in preparation for budgets in the coming years. We appropriate quite a bit of money to GVB, other than what their funds are derived from on the Tourist Attraction Fund, which is basically a pass-through, but it's still essentially it's an appropriation because it's money used specifically for that purpose. So I support the amendment and have a few more comments on the main motion, Mr. Speaker, but certainly this is in line with what this legislature has been doing for this upcoming budget. Jesus Masi.
Thank you very much, sir. On the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Are there any objections to the amendment? Any objections to the amendment? Senator Long, you want to close on the amendment? Okay. No objections to the amendment? So ordered. Senator Long, you still have the floor.
That's on the main bill, Mr. Speaker.
On the main bill as amended.
Yeah, I spoke on it already, so I can yield to.
Sure.
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. On the bill as amended, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Gentleman from Tamuning, sir, you recognize him.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and I rise in support of the bill as amended. And, Mr. Speaker, I was asked a couple of times by folks that I hold in high regard, seems like a little bit of a ping pong here. What is your position, your co-sponsor to this bill now on it returning to the board? And to me, it was simple. I said, in my review, and of course with the chairman, he's very active with GVB. He attends all the meetings. I've attended a few, and you even attended, and some other senators have attended, Mr. Speaker, in the last fiscal year with some presentations that were made to us, which led up to the incentive budget that was, prepared within this current fiscal year. And, it's kind of interesting, Mr. Speaker, because really, in the oversights that we've had of GVB, that issue has come up a number of times, and that issue was vetted. That issue was vetted to the point to where it was, you yourself asked, very important questions during that meeting, in terms of how things were going to work, even with some commitments that had already been made. And the board had to answer to that. I use that as an example, Mr. Speaker, because the bottom line is, in the end, whether or not, when they approve the overall budget, but when things do come up on travel, that basically the general manager, the general manager right now basically just makes the decision and off they go. If it comes back and there's repercussions to it, that maybe it wasn't the return on investment wasn't there, or it looked like something that we were already doing or have been doing for a long time, and what additional return on investment do we have from this? If there's questions like that, who's going to answer that in the end? It will be in a board meeting at some point to where they have to evaluate that. Now, Mr. Speaker, we know, those of us who have followed GVB for the longest time, they have their traditional, annual travels that are built into their budget that are to shore up markets that, are important to us. Very easy to understand. Japan, Korea, and then emerging markets, we understand that. Those are generally built in and it's understood. It's outside of that, really, where, to me, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure there's obviously planning that goes on when these things are become into inception and the travel is actually finalized. It doesn't seem like it'd be too difficult with their regular board meetings that they hold to ensure that gets on the agenda. It's first of all notified to the board and gets on the agenda so that they can discuss it. And then when, the travel is complete, we also have, the additional transparency of what was done, what was spent, and what is the on the record, return on investment for that particular travel. Mr. Speaker, the issue too on short notice and the like, I'm sure that internally they can manage that. I think that this is really designed primarily for the accountability in terms of what ends up being a decision, and a decision that the board themselves have to back up, should there be any, either on the positive side and report that good news to Guam, or, if there's scrutiny to it, that also has, that efficacy of being controlled by the board. Mr. Speaker, in the end, it's kind of interesting because after I had these conversations, we still agreed to disagree on some matters. But what it really came down to is, if you listen to our businesses, and there's articles in the paper today in terms of what diversification of there's a lot of people concentrating on tourism right now and how we're managing to traverse this ground of getting back as close to we can to pre-pandemic levels. There's a lot of opinions, and people feel a certain way about how those precious resources are being spent. So I don't see any issue with making sure that both sides are accountable on the general management level and on the board level, to where it's very, very clear that they have active participation. So like the good senator and the author of the bill said, when he goes down to a meeting, you don't have to get that report saying, hey, there's a question about this travel or that travel, and the answer is, well, we didn't know. And I just think that, to me, ends up being something that kind of can be avoided and should be avoided. And so for that reason, I think that, simply put, this is the best operational way to run, and the accountability to the people of Guam and between management and the board. Avoid any misunderstandings and keep that transparency there at the top of the level. So I support the bill, and for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I hope that we get the support of the body. Sijus Masi.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Gentlelady from Zonia, ma'am, you're recognized.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Speaker. I support this bill. I love how the sponsors of the bill are now all for accountability and transparency in regards to GVB's budget. The statutes have always said that the GVB's budget, all funds appropriated to the Bureau by the government of Guam shall be considered grants and aid. No disbursement of funds of the Bureau shall be made unless the same has been approved, authorized, and ordered by the Board of Directors. So this same provision, administrative provisions of travel in the budget laws, for years have always reflected that it would be approved by the Board of Directors. It was only in the fiscal year 24 budget that this language was changed. I think I objected at the time. There were only about 3 of us who objected, but the rest of the senators, they agreed at that time to change it to general manager instead of board of directors. It seems to me that accountability and transparency is only applicable depending on whether you like the general manager or you don't, or something to that effect. And so I support this, but I don't support this notion that they don't remember that they don't remember that it was them who changed it from board of directors to general manager, and now, for some reason, want to hold this particular general manager more accountable or more transparent than the other. So I think they have a board. The board by statute is authorized to authorize spending of the funds. Travel is obviously spending of the funds. So it should be at the board's authority. So I support the bill, but I just don't support the rewriting of history. Situs Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended. Gentleman from Momototomai, to say you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, in principle, have no problem with this bill. I think it's a perfectly fine bill. But I do share my colleagues' apprehension at how arbitrary this all feels. Because I voted against the budget that had this provision in it, that moved it from the board to the directors. All the same people that voted for that budget are also now saying that we want to strip away the power that we ourselves put into Guam Visitors Bureau. And the only thing that seems to have changed is the leadership. And so now we are not okay with this. Let's not forget that the previous president of GVB accused the board of corruption, and they refused to meet. What happens if we have a similar situation in the future? Are we going to switch back the rules depending on whether we like the person running GVB or not? Like, I am for principled rule, but it feels like we are using phrases like accountability and performance-based budgeting to paper over overtly political acts. And like I said, this is a perfectly fine rule. But when are we going to change it again? Why are we going to change it again? The people need to know that we are stable and judicious in our decision making, and supporting rules based on whether or not that person is our godzu. That's not right. Equal protection under the law. Rules are rules for everyone. And it is disconcerting that this is a direction the legislature is taking. The whole world is burning down over the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The prices of gasoline and diesel are at absurd levels. And we're trying to rearrange the chairs on the Titanic. It speaks to misplaced priorities, where we would rather play political games within agencies using the force of the law rather than do more serious work. This could have waited until the budget season. We could have just put it into the next budget. But we want to make a big show of taking away somebody's travel. By all metrics, they're doing a bang-up job. The last president did a bang-up job. They all did the best they could considering the world circumstances. Things were getting better. But frankly, I do not see any president succeeding in that situation with the price of jet fuel skyrocketing. That's going to have direct impacts on our tourism. And we're worried about who's going to authorize travel? So I don't necessarily have an objection to this bill, but like my previous colleague, I have a problem with this rewriting of history. And so I potentially see this bill passing this legislature. But the people of Guam should know there is something foul and petty going on here. And I myself don't quite understand it. But that's all I have to say about that, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you very much, sir. On the bill as amended, gentleman from Talavovo, and then I'll get.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to offer comments regarding Bill 279. Mr. Speaker, Guam Law 12 GCA Section 9113 provides that a condition for receiving any funds appropriated to GVB by the Guam Legislature, GVB shall agree to abide by the off-island travel rates and regulations applicable. I'll say it again, applicable to Government of Guam employees. Through the General Appropriations Act of 2026, GVB is appropriated $28.9 million, including $3.2 million from the general fund and $25.7 million from the TAF. Since 1983, GVB's primary purpose has been to promote, develop tourism. Even well before that, effective marketing is the key to attracting people and having an economic impact on the area, in our case, Guam from north to south. How well has GVB promoted Guam and its members? Especially with nearly $29 million, the role of GVB has expanded over the 4+ decades. As our visitor arrivals have grown, our related stakeholders have become more numerous. That is why in 2026, GVB needs to join their counterparts around the world that are transitioning into institutions, Mr. Speaker, that influence and organize destination governance. And Bill 279 is just one example of that. Mr. Speaker, the Government of Guam Travel and Transportation Policy, which was updated effective October 1, 2022, includes a medical referral and education mileage program, and essentially serves as a fund for the banking of travel mileage earned as a result of travel paid by the Government of Guam through the use of Government of Guam credit cards. Guam law requires that airline mileage earned from GVB employee travel shall be made available to eligible students to participate at off-island cultural activities, including but not limited to arts and humanities competitions and international cultural festivals and exchanges. And I'm sure they're considering bringing them along to some of these trips that they've been going on recently. Mr. Speaker, we also learned through OPA Report 23-11 from December of 2023 that GVB officials used their corporate credit cards in violation of certain provisions of its credit card policy and procedures and the Guam procurement law and regulations. Among their findings, the OPA reported that GVB issued excess per diem allowances and the organization did not establish a system to capture airline mileage, resulting in the lost opportunity to defray costs for, guess what, student travel. Mr. Speaker, GVB requested $1,042,685 in FY 2026 for off-island travel, or $360,039 above its FY 2024 travel budget. Now, according to their financial documents, $144,708.21 was spent by GVB for 48 travelers based on their FY 2025 fourth quarter travel report. Mr. Speaker, if any portion of the off-island travel was funded using a GVB credit card, will any of the accrued airline mileage be made available to eligible students to participate with GVB at off-island cultural activities, including but not limited to arts and humanities competitions and international cultural festivals and exchanges? We have to ask. Mr. Speaker, this policy intends to restore the GVB board's authority to establish a plan for critical agency travel activities, a corresponding budget, and clear deliverables in return for accessing limited taxpayer resources. If approved, this policy change can help the GVB Board of Directors ensure that TAF-funded travel complies with established policies that apply to all departments and agencies across the government of Guam, inclusive of our Visitors Bureau. With Guam consistently welcoming fewer tourists, Guam's primary tourist district has been described recently basically as a ghost town, and product fatigue is threatening to change tourism as we know it. Bill 279 can and must help convey to GVB management and the wider tourism industry that the people of Guam, through this branch of government, expect leadership to step up to the task of bringing back more tourists to do their job, or if not, we humbly ask to get out of the way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to offer my thoughts on this bill.
You're welcome, sir. On the bill as amended, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Gentleman from Mipan, sir, you're recognized.
Buenas tardes to the people of Guam. Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues, and thank you for watching our YouTube stream and our Docomo and GTA channels as well on this beautiful Wednesday morning. I rise, Mr. Speaker, just to echo the comments of my colleagues from Jotnia and Mong Totu Maiti, and this idea that we're rewriting the history. Let me just refresh the memory, because when it was their Godzu, who was heading the Guam Visitors Bureau, they wanted their Godzu to have the ultimate authority to travel wherever, whenever. And I think it's a little ironic because some of my colleagues were traveling with their Godzu multiple times. But now that we have different leadership at the Guam Visitors Bureau, and I'm not saying any of my colleagues have a problem with women leaders, but I'll leave that for the people of Guam to decide. But now that we have new leadership at GVB, they want to give it back over to the board, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. I just have a problem with the inconsistency of the application of the terms accountability and transparency. And I think it's very clear for the people of Guam to see there's one standard for the good old boys, and there's an entirely other standard for those who aren't connected to the good old boys. So, Sidus Masia, Mr. Speaker, just for the opportunity to lodge my comments on the bill. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended. Are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Gentleman from Jigo, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I've heard from my colleagues, the past, we took the board out because the board wasn't there. Let's just remind ourselves. Now the board is active? Great. They mentioned Gadzu, Gadzu, former general manager, Hagasa, Itu. They needed it to keep going. Now the board are saying they're active. I hope they stay active. And as one of my colleagues brought up, hope they're pursuing the promotion of tourism. And if they can't do it, then step down. That includes the board, not just the members of GVB. It's everybody at GVB. And with that, I have no objection on the amendment. I just wanted to make it very clear. At the time, there was changed because there was no activity. And for some of my colleagues that were there, hasufan, bastet mamaskusa, tasiga mona. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're very welcome, sir. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended. Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill as amended? No other senators? Senator Lohan, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank my colleagues for, again, and supporting this bill. And, you know, to what was said earlier in regards to if it's not your person, if it's not your Gadzu, then it's a different play now. Well, some folks who said that are a member of the committee. And if you would attend GVB meetings and the numerous oversights that this committee has held for the Guam Visitors Bureau in conjunction with the Airport Authority, these are the questions that we've asked them. In the board meetings as well, you would see that reflected under minutes when I've asked the question, and the board would answer, no, we didn't approve that, we didn't know about that. And oversights, they would say the same thing. I said, so what do you want to do? Well, we don't know what we are, whether we're a advisory board or a policy board. Okay, what do you want to start off with? What can we do to make things better and have things more accountable and more transparent? And so you would come back and be able to give us answers rather than, I don't know, we didn't approve that. We just approved a blanket budget. Numerous times in the GVB board meeting that I asked that question, and numerous times was that asked in the numerous amounts of oversights that we've had here. And if members would attend that oversight, they would have heard as such. And so that being said, I said, okay, we're going to do this. This didn't come out of the blue. This came out of the oversight. We said, this is what we're going to do. That last oversight with the Airport Authority alongside GVB, we said, this afternoon you would have a bill that would give you back the authority. And we did. This is what they asked for. And they've said this numerous times. So it's not about Agazu. It's about asking them, what can we do to better things, to be able to answer the questions that we ask from this body. Colleagues, this legislation is simple, practical, and necessary. It restores again the Guam Visitors Bureau Board of Directors' authority over travel, exactly as it existed historically. We are not creating new bureaucracy. We are not restricting essential functions. We are restoring the accountability and transparency in the process that has been working and what they've asked for and what we promised we would give them after the oversight, the numerous oversights that we've had with them. And the oversights will continue, colleagues. This bill ensures that public funds are spent wisely, that decisions about travel are vetted by the board, and the taxpayers of Guam have confidence in their money that is being spent and used responsibly. The alternative, allowing travel to proceed without proper oversight, is a slap in the face to businesses struggling on our island and to residents who are watching public funds being spent without accountability. This is not a message that we should send. Restoring the authority of the board is common sense. It is fairness. It is accountability, exactly what the people of Guam expect from their government. It is what the board wants. It is what we said we will deliver to them. And again, in the numerous oversights that we've had with the authority and the GVB board meetings as well. With that, Mr. Speaker, I respectfully request to move this measure into the voting file. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
On the motion to move Bill 279-38 COR as amended on the floor to the third reading file, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Gumtato, you are recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to go back to the motion section of our session agenda so that I may offer a motion to reconsider the actions of the body.
Any objection? There is an objection to go back to motions. All those in favor of going back to motions for the purpose, would please indicate by raising your hand. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I motion to reconsider the actions of the body on Bill number 214-38 as amended by the Committee on Finance and Government Operations and further amended on the floor. My motion yesterday to move the bill to the voting file failed to receive 8 votes. Mr. Speaker, the Guam Ethics Commission statute created in 1996 by this body, finally executed in 2019. This modernization policy was done, especially in the markup process, in close collaboration with the Guam Ethics Commission and its executive director. They were watching our deliberations yesterday. Their hope for this policy remains integrity, public trust, accountability. That is what Bill 214 does. The executive will still have the ability to appoint members. The executive can engage community members outside the government, including but not limited to. That language is in the proposal. No preferences, just a broader group to guide appointments to this important commission. Great and contributing members to our island society all. The teeth remain on the penalties in this policy. Changes were made too for stipends to be restored. An action done here on the floor to make the policy better. Again, this policy is supported by the Commission. They certainly did not oppose the version of Bill 214 before us. Mr. Speaker, Bill 214 is and remains a step forward in our collective desire to deter and eliminate potential unethical behavior and actions which undermine public trust in our institutions of the government of Guam. I remain steadfast in my belief that this particular measure can and must help to restore our people's faith in their government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, in advance for your support of this action.
There is a motion to reconsider the actions of the body on relative to Bill 214-38 COR. Any discussion? Any objections? No, this is just the motion to reconsider it first. Any objections? Discussion? Ma'am, from Joining you, recognize.
Yes. I don't have my file right now because I wasn't expecting this motion, but my memory serves me right. It was really a simple amendment that we had proposed to remove certain organizations from being recommended to sit on this board, whereas right now it's an open criteria of who can sit on the board, except that no government of Guam employees or their families can sit on this board. So of course, it's already leaning towards private individuals, privately employed individuals, non-governmental Guam individuals. But the bill as written, and the amendment that we tried to pass, was just to simply remove those preferences that the Ethics Commission did not request. And when they keep saying, oh, but they didn't object, well, they didn't request that. There was no problem with the composition of the commission. And so I can't help but wonder, why are you changing the composition of the commission or proposing to change that if there's no problem with that? And in fact, they testified that they have been actively working, they have very competent people, and they want to proceed. They wanted stiffer penalties, yes. So we all support the stiffer penalties. We want to support the change in the quorum so that their meetings can happen more often or regularly without quorum impediments. So yes, let's do that. Why throw something in that was not requested? Why throw that in there? We're catering to certain people, catering to certain organizations. I just think when we're talking about an ethics commission, that's the last thing you want to do, is muddy the waters as to why you are doing that. So I object to that motion, or else when we do reconsider the bill, I'd like to reiterate my amendment to remove that language. Mr. Speaker.
On the motion to reconsider, gentleman from EPAN, sir, you recognize.
Mr. Speaker, since yesterday we were discussing this bill, I'd received numerous communications from government of Guam employees who raised the concern that the bill is introduced and the bill is heard is very different from the bill we debated and discussed in its removal of the government of Guam employees and this new language that gives the governor the authority to seek and consider nominations from these various groups like the Guam Bar Association, which, again, I don't necessarily have a problem with. I think that the Ethics Commission had testified on the bill, which included the government of Guam employees, and I think that's the real sticking point here is that the government of Guam employees deserve representation, deserve a seat at the table on the Guam Ethics Commission. And I think that's really the sticking point. It's not necessarily opposing, trying to increase the independence or effectiveness of the Guam Ethics Commission. I think not including the government employees and even doing a bait and switch on the bill is not very effective and does not promote the independence of the Ethics Commission. So I just wanted to rise and put that on the record. Sijos Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the motion to reconsider, Gentlelady from Barragata.
Yeah, so I also object to the additional language that takes out that it seems to give preference to these specific entities, the Guam Bar Association, Society for Human Resource Management, Guam chapter.
Please, we're on the motion to reconsider.
Okay, yes. So I basically want to register my objection to it. Do I get to discuss the reasons at this point? Yes, that's what I was doing. Thank you.
I just need you to articulate that. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
So yeah, my objection to reconsideration is really this part of the bill. I mean, everything else is great, right? I'm all for independence of the Ethics Commission. But now it looks like we are giving preference to certain entities in our community that don't necessarily have to comply with the ethics requirements. We all know that Government of Guam employees are bound by ethics requirements, not the private sector. And a lot of these entities are the private sector. So it really calls into question, why are we, it seems we're weakening the standard. We're weakening the standard of basically by who is in this, who is being preferred, the preferred group to be on this commission. Because if you actually read this even closer, it says that the governor shall seek and consider recommendations from community organizations, right? So it really, by omission, it's leaving out civil sector. And so it could be read, it could be interpreted in a way that eliminates the full body of the community. And we know that civil sector employees are bound by ethics rules that are stated in our statutes, not the private sector. And so that's why I asked those questions. What is a guarantee that we can be assured that the members are going to uphold ethics when they themselves are not bound by statutory ethics rules and statutory requirements? And again, it wasn't asked, the change wasn't asked, and I asked the sponsor, you know, what was the support for this change? And I got an answer, but it wasn't sufficient. And, you know, if this is going to be the reason, you know, we want the Ethics Commission to be independent. We want to be assured that they are upholding the public trust. But when we are providing language that gives preference to groups that are not bound by ethics and are based on our statutes, it really calls into question this bill now. You know, it calls into question this bill. I want transparency, accountability. I want ethics to be implemented properly. And just this language alone really calls into the question the bill. Unless, yeah, there could be a change where the preference is taken out. Yeah, to me, this part is problematic. It's causing a problem with this bill at this point. And yeah, that's my concern for objecting to reconsideration. Thank you.
On the motion to reconsider the actions of the body, There is, I'm gonna, there is an objection to it? Okay. There is an objection to reconsider the actions of the body, a motion to reconsider the actions of the body. Therefore, all those in favor of reconsidering the actions of the body, please indicate by raising your hands. Motion carries. On the motion to reconsider the actions of the body, okay, to move the actions of the body was, it failed to move down. Now to reconsider the actions of all those in favor of moving Bill 214-38 COR as amended of the floor to the third reading, please indicate by raising your hands. Motion carries. While still on motions, Vice Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the objections of the Magahagan Guahan, I move to act upon veto bill number 176, that's 38 COR. And this is an act to add a new subsection 5128 to Chapter 5, Title 5, Guam Code annotated relative to commercial lease extension for tenants in good standing.
On the motion, notwithstanding the objections of the Magahagan Guahan to place vetoed bill number 176-38 COR, which is an act to add a new subsection 5128 to Chapter 5, Title 5, Guam Code annotated, relative to commercial lease extension for tenants in good standing. Into the voting file, are there any members who wish to speak on the motion?
Mr. Speaker, could we just get a recess for 5 minutes to get the files in front of us, or that bill that they're considering?
Let's take a recess. Legislature is back from session. On the motion to, notwithstanding the objections of the Magahagan, to move to override the veto of Bill 176-38 COR. Any senators wishing to speak on the motion? Huh? No, it's not. Any senator wishing to speak on the motion? Senator Talai, you're recognized, ma'am.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker. I rise in objection to the override of the governor's veto on this bill. This is a bill that would allow for all commercial leases of government of Guam property that they can all of a sudden be extended for up to 30 years without legislative oversight. And now I'm going to quote from the governor's veto message. Without legislative oversight, directly contradicting the statements made by legislators when explaining their votes to override the veto of Bill 119, this raises concerns that the author of this bill is attempting to provide a sweetheart deal to a specific company or individual by allowing that entity to bypass paying the true value of the lease they seek to renew for up to 30 years, without competitive bidding or legislative review. Nothing presented during the hearings or debates justified offering existing leases special deals, while new businesses are effectively locked out of competition. She also went on to say, I vetoed the bill because the indecision of this legislature complicates the process for leasing public land. Businesses cannot operate effectively when they're unsure when the rules may change or when they may become political pawns. Yet, with the passage of Bill 176, it is stated that if an initial lease exceeds 15 years, it requires explicit legislative approval. However, if a lease is for 15 years or less, this bill says it can avoid that scrutiny, enabling the lessee to extend their lease to 30 years without competition. I agree with the governor on this. It's actually, the bill was passed, many of the remarks, the sponsor said, this is for small businesses. That's one of the reasons I object, because it is not. It is a lie that this is for small businesses. It was passed on the pretense of protecting small businesses, but it treats multi-million-dollar global businesses the same as small businesses. It equates AT&T, Smithbridge, Black Construction with small family businesses. That none of those, that AT&T does not have to compete, that we don't have to get full value necessarily. It doesn't address, it doesn't allow the government of Guam, after a certain number of years, to see what are its changing needs. What do we need to do? Do we still need gravel? Or do we need something else? That's why these leases require legislative review after a certain number of years, because the needs of the people of Guam change. And yes, it's easy for you to get a deal today for lock this land in for a long period of time. But that does not give us fair competition. Especially these companies are not bidding for a longer lease. They're just automatically being allowed to now, after procurement, get a longer lease. It's actually completely contrary to the principles of our procurement law, that everyone's going to get to compete fairly. That should be one of the attractions of Guam, that we can implement a procurement law fairly. We can make people compete for best value for the government, for the people, and that no one's going to get special favors like this. If they want to go into a longer lease, the legislature can authorize longer leases and then put those properties out for bid, and let's see the value we can get for the people of Guam for a longer lease. But let's not just take people who are in a very short-term lease right now and grant them a longer lease without any competition. It's troubling, to say the least. That word is not even strong enough. It's concerning. This is really the epitome. It's the epitome of special favors. And I know people are going to say, oh, but this is for the small mom and pop store or the small family business. No, it's for any lease of government land. They treat them all the same. They say, you're special, you don't have to compete, even though you're a multi-million-dollar company getting a very low rent on Guam. And the people, meanwhile, are starving, facing rising costs of living that we in here are struggling to find answers for. So I completely disagree with this bill. I think it's a special interest legislation, and I think we should stick with the governor's veto on this.
On the motion to override the governor's veto on Bill 176-38 COR, are there any senators wishing to discuss the matter? Are there any other senators? Gentleman from EPAN, sir, you're recognized.
Yeah, it's very interesting in this 38 Guam Legislature. I find myself agreeing with some of the governor's vetoes way more than I did in the previous one. And she's right to call us Zori, because as a body we are flip-flopping. But it was very clear in our first session, the first law that we passed removed legislative scrutiny for leases. That was the first move, was to take away accountability, take away transparency relative to the people's land, not our land, the people's land. So this bill, we don't know which business, big or small, it's for, but it's very clear it's for someone. But we just don't know who, because the author won't say. And I hate to think in this session and in previous sessions, what it looks like to me is that we have a few people in here running for governor, lieutenant governor, and they want to set it up so that when they get in, they have all these laws at their disposal to reward their supporters, to reward their special interests. That's what this is really about. And you can eye a day, but it just flies in the face of what my Republican colleagues are supposed to all be about: fair competition among the businesses. This is no competition. This allows a sweetheart deal, and they put in that an appraiser can appraise the property, but when the lease is extended, they can keep the rent the same for 30 years. That's what the bill allows for. It says the lease shall be extended and not be less than the previous 5-year period, but it doesn't say it shall be more. It doesn't say it shall be more. So that's what this is about. This is about locking in a sweetheart deal for up to 30 years and throwing procurement and competition and getting the best deal for our people's property out the window in favor of special interest politics. Mr. Speaker.
On the motion, any senators wishing to speak on the motion? On the motion, any other senators wishing to speak? Gentlelady from Barrigada, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in objection to the override of the governor's veto on this bill for the reasons expressed by my colleagues today. It treats businesses as if they're one and the same, from small to large businesses. It doesn't allow for competition. And so we know in the previous legislature, there was a bill for AT&T. There was a lease for at least $273,000, I believe. I forget if that's monthly or yearly, but whatever they're paying now, it's locked in with this bill. And so the people of Guam stand to lose revenues that can go towards a time when we desperately need it. The power credits, for instance, we're short on that because we can't collect on the real property taxes, or we have a delayed collection of real property taxes. And so these are times where we cannot lose sight of covering the shortages that we know that exist currently and are foreseeable in the near future. And so now we have this override attempt, which is going to even further reduce the government's capability of making up for the losses. We want procurement to be fair across the board. But if we're allowing low leases to be locked in, how does that benefit? Who does it benefit? Our people. And so I rise to objection to the override of the governor's veto on this bill, and I ask for my colleagues to really think about this. Are they here to support the needs of our people who are even starving, who lack the basic needs? $273,000 may not be a lot for people, for some of you, but it could feed a lot of our people on Guam today. So who are we serving in this body? We talk about supporting families. Is this going to support families? Masi.
Thank you. On the motion to override the veto of the governors of Bill 176, that's 38 COR. Any other senators wanting to speak? No other senators? Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleagues for their discussion on this veto override. It's really interesting. When you go to the airport, you see an exodus of people going out, not coming in. You see businesses closing constantly. I don't see businesses opening up. When we have an opportunity to keep a business in place and keep them open, then absolutely we're doing something for our community. Not only is that business providing tax revenues for this community, it also provides employment. The big businesses that they spoke about that, they're looking out for the big business. Go up to Smithbridge and ask them how many people they employ. Or go to a small mom and pop store and ask them how many people they employ. Businesses generate the revenue for this island, not this body. And yes, I do things to ensure that we can continue to support our communities in many different ways. Not just in this body, but in my own personal business as well. And no, this bill will not support my business. But I like to see how many of my colleagues here, the shoe fits, wear it, go out there and support the community with their own private funds. So let's not talk about special interests. Let's not talk about what are we going to do for, or what have we done, or what are we doing. If you all haven't been aware, DFS is closing, Lotte Duty Free is leaving. We're talking about revenues. It was spoken about revenues. We have probably about $130 million of uncollected taxes. And this bill does not give 30 years. It's 15 years. It's an extension of the lease up to 15 years that is reviewed every 5 years to go with the current values. So no, this is not a special interest bill. Again, Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues for their support on this veto override, and I appreciate their votes. Thank you.
Thank you. There is an objection to the motion, notwithstanding the objections of Imaga Hagan Guam, to place veto bill number 176-38 COR in the voting file. There has been an objection. All those in favor of placing bill 176-38 COR for consideration of an override, please indicate by raising your hands. Motion carries. We're still in motions. The gentleman from Manguto to Maiti, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, at this time, I would like to add bill number 40-38 COR onto the session agenda. It's an act to appropriate $3,500,000 from fiscal year 2025 general fund revenues collected in excess of the Guam Preservation Trust for the purpose of rehabilitation of the historic Francisco Q. Sanchez Elementary School property.
Can you repeat the bill number?
Yes, sir. An act to appropriate
The bill number.
Bill number 40-38 COR.
Let's take a 1-minute recess. Legislature is back in session. Senator Parkinson, can you reiterate, again, your motion, please?
Yes, sir. At this time, I would like to, notwithstanding the House rules, to add Bill number 40-38 COR, an act to appropriate $3,500,000 from fiscal year 2025 general fund revenues collected in excess of the adopted levels enumerated in Public Law 37-125 to the Guam Preservation Trust for the purpose of rehabilitation of the historic Francisco Q. Sanchez Elementary School property. I'd like to put it at the end of the bills that are to be in the committee of the whole, and I'd like to discuss it at that time.
Well, right now, according to the records that we have, this bill has not had a public hearing. And because the motion is notwithstanding, it is a debatable motion, but I just advise the body that based on the standing rules and statutory, that it must have a public hearing. It is a revenue bill, and so that may require other items, but that is for the body to decide. Okay?
Yes.
So on that notwithstanding motion.
Can I discuss the motion, sir?
Well, first off, I have to address that it's not it has not met certain statutory requirements. Okay? To discuss the merit of the bill will not address the non-statutory requirement, the statutory requirements that it has not been able to address. Okay? So I need to be able to dissect this properly. So we got to deal with the notwithstanding motion first before and then if it passes the body, then you can discuss the bill. Okay? Got it? All right. On the discussion. Gentleman from Tumuning, sir, you're recognized.
For discussion purposes, Mr. Speaker, I believe that we can all Google recent articles from the governor's office stating from their fiscal team that we do not have any revenue available on the identified funding source. In fact, the administration has made a point to say that there's actually a deficit within the 24 and 25 appropriation. So I just wanted to put that on the record as we consider this motion.
Can you repeat that, sir?
Yes. You can just use your Google right now to see comments made by the governor's office and the fiscal team that they say that this legislature has over appropriated, and there is actually a deficit within the fiscal years of fiscal year 24 and 25, I believe to the tune of somewhere around 13 million, 12.8 or 13 million, and stating that that's the reason even why they're having difficulty and now allowing agencies to use lapses from that were carryover appropriations. And so that's officially on the record from the administration.
Thank you. On the notwithstanding motion, any other discussion? No other discussion? On the notwithstanding motion to consider, to place Bill 40-38 COR into the third reading or into the second reading, into the agenda.
Just a point
Gentlemen.
of inquiry. Did it have a public hearing?
Pardon me?
Was there a public hearing?
No, there was no public hearing. But because it's a notwithstanding motion and the way he presented it, it's a debatable motion. This is a debatable motion. Now remember that the motion that is to be debated, is to be discussed, is whether or not we should consider to put Bill 40 onto the session agenda. And once it's on the session agenda, then we can discuss Bill 40. Okay?
Mr. Speaker, I know we're notwithstanding the rules, but there's also a law that prohibits us from considering bills without a public hearing in Title II.
Understood.
So I
but
would say that it's against the law and that
I
we
know,
should not do that.
but because it's notwithstanding, the legislature is not bound by past legislative actions. And you do have the power to be able to circumvent the law, for a lack of a better term, but that's the decision of the body. I cannot make that decision unilaterally. Okay? So, on that motion, are there any objections to that motion? There is an objection to the motion. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to consider placing Bill 40-38 COR.
Excuse me, sir, may I close on that debatable motion?
You want to close? It's a debatable motion. You can close on it. So go ahead.
The necessity for this motion is because there is a time sensitivity to the repairs for this school. The materials and things have been bought. We have bought to the tune of $3.5 million already as a cost that's been paid up, and we need another $3.5 million to finish it, or all of the stuff that we've already bought and paid for is just going to rot. And this was, and I was asked by the people who are stakeholders in this to relitigate this issue again, because this has been introduced in January of 2025 and to this day has never properly had a public hearing. And so we see in the CRER reports that there is money that is excess revenue, and if there is excess revenue, we should consider using it for FQ Sanchez before the things we've already invested go to rot.
With that,
Point of information, Mr. Speaker. I understand the concerns of the current speaker. The issue here I want to put on the record is this has been an ongoing discussion between the administration and the Guam Preservation Trust. You know, these are unanticipated costs which were, I believe, incurred as additional costs, and there was provisions from what we understood in discussions that there was the ability for transfer authority by the governor's office, and that's what's been under dispute as well as their budget itself in terms of authority. And so that's one of the reasons why we've been going back and forth on this issue. But certainly it needs to be vetted at some point, but I'm really concerned because many of us were down there when the pronouncements were made by the administration. This project is going to go forward, and they're going to find the funds, and they're going to fund the project up to whatever levels are required to finish. And that's the conversation that's been going on. So very worthy discussion, but a discussion that needs to be done in concert with where has that support gone to be able to remit additional resources to this project. Sidus Masi.
thank you. Okay, there has been an objection to the motion. All those in favor of proceeding to consider putting Bill 40-38 onto the session agenda, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Okay. Still in motions. You still have the floor, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I would like to, notwithstanding House rules, to add Bill number 289-38 COR, an act to appropriate $32,266,200 from fiscal year 2026 general funds revenue collected in excess of the adopted levels enumerated in Public Law 38-60 to the Guam Power Authority for a 6-month extension of the Programa Nzudi para Itautau Energy Credit Program relative to providing emergency power credit to Guam ratepayers in response to global energy prices, volatility, and the cost of living pressures resulting from the war in Iran. I recognize that the money currently in the CARER is insufficient, but it is my intent that if this bill were to get onto the session agenda at the end of the Committee of the Whole bills, that I will introduce a substitute version for half the amount that should be well within the ability of the CARER to absorb if the body chooses to do so.
And this obviously has not had its public hearing as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Notwithstanding the House rules, there is that on that motion. Are there any objections to the motion? Any discussion? Go ahead.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, clearly we have now on the record from BBMR in an article today, I believe in the Post, that the $21+ million shortfall in government revenues due to the TEFF not collecting because of the tax roll that has not gone out. They're not supporting so far, at least at that level, to this legislation. The other thing is I'm currently awaiting, Mr. Speaker, as the Chair of Office and Finance and Budget, if we read the CRER, for some reason it still does not include the $20 million appropriation of first line excess revenues appropriated this body to GMH, as well as $5 million to Department of Corrections. So a very worthy bill, worthy of attention. But right now, if we just put those two numbers together, there simply is no funding for this, given that consideration. So I believe we should act in due diligence, making sure that we have correct numbers of availability before just motioning, first of all, to have the bill placed without a public hearing, which would have vetted all of this, as well as the situation that exists and on the record from BBMR saying there's an extreme shortfall with return to consideration of this proposal. Sijus Masi.
You're welcome. On the motion, General Lady from Jonia, ma'am, you're recognized.
Rebecca Rice, a point of inquiry if there is a public hearing set for this bill and when it was introduced. If the
Does anybody have
sponsor
that
would yield.
question?
The bill was introduced a few weeks ago, but there has been no public hearing that has been set or scheduled at all.
The bill was introduced on March 16, and there has been no public hearing set for it.
All right. If I could ask the committee if he would yield, the committee chair, is there a public hearing going to be set on this bill soon?
I'm intending to evaluate the fiscal viability through clarification from Office of Finance and Budget as well as BBMR to correct the CRER representations. And until I get that, I think it will be irresponsible to have a public hearing on something that obviously could possibly have no funding source. But certainly I will hear the bill, but I want to clearly see a fiscal note that would at least give us a number that would be available. But right now, I told you, if you just add those two numbers up, it's pretty clear. It's close to what the excess revenue is tracking. There are other shortfalls outside of the TEFF as well, Mr. Speaker, in other areas, and so the grand total probably is a couple million of difference right now. But I am planning to have a public hearing as soon as I can get a viable funding source associated with the bill.
Does that satisfy your inquiry?
Yes, I guess. So there's no public hearing set. There's not one going to be set unless BBMR changes how they're doing the CRERs. I feel like we've been having this issue, though, going on for a couple months, and we need to call them in on a hearing. And if they're not going to change how they do the CRERs, a hearing on the bill would at least have them answer the question and verify that information that their CRERs that are currently showing deficit, I think, would be even more deficit if they showed the appropriations for FY26 excess revenues. And I just want to be clear whether we are, by this bill or any other bill, preempting the expenditures for those appropriations. That's very important to know. I don't want to keep guessing. I don't want to just do banter back and forth. I would like to have them in here and get them to swear on the record whether, what these numbers really are. And the fact that they keep announcing a deficit is very concerning. We have several bills waiting for appropriations. Very, very important. I think we just need to settle that once and for all. And I would encourage the chair to just have a hearing on any of those bills, get BBMR to, or hopefully tomorrow if they're here, for our committee of the whole, we can get this information confirmed as well. And because all of these bills, trying to appropriate this FY26 money is important. These are issues that have come up since passage of the budget and should be addressed as promptly as possible. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Okay, on the motion, is there an objection to the motion? There is an objection to the motion. You want to close on this, sir?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the discussion. I do think, though, that between these two bills, with an old emergency and a new emergency, that we should look to our excess revenues as a way to address them. Because when we did the budget, we gamed out the budget the whole year. So when this excess revenue was never to be appropriated for anything that we budgeted for. This was all money we didn't expect to have. And so rather than using it on other priorities, I think we should prioritize relief for the people during this cost of living crisis caused by the war in Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and pray that this is a short-term, limited engagement rather than a multi-year war that can really reshape the face of how we conduct business in the world. And in the interim, while we are going through these struggles, we should have the conversation on where our priorities will be with this excess revenue. And I think that prioritizing it towards people who will go out and immediately spend it in the economy, I think that is a worthy conversation to have. And I think this is an appropriate place to put it because we are going into the committee of the whole here soon. We are about to have conversations with finance people who will be doing it under oath. So why not consider having that conversation today? People are clearly clamoring for the relief. People are scared about what this could mean into the future. And we, with our limited amount of tools here at the legislature, should do what we can to provide that relief when we can. Maybe have a greater conversation as to how we go from a more globalized world to one that would value resiliency, self-sustainability. So I ask my colleagues to, let's have the conversation, not just on this one, but on the bill to refresh FQ Sanchez. Because new emergency, old emergency, we have money available. We should consider using it for one of them.
I need to correct you, Senator. The presentation, based on a point of inquiry, was that there is still some skepticism as to whether or not there is enough in the excess to cover what already has been budgeted in previous, to the tune of $25 million.
No, I understand, sir, and I think that's why it would be useful to have the finance people be here under oath to testify to that one way or the other.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. And the order is that when we have the committee of the whole on the other legislation, there's nothing that precludes. In fact, we will get the exact picture of the government when those officials come in. So you don't need a bill to be placed on the agenda in order to have that conversation. The very fact that we'll be in the committee of the whole discussing the other bills will enumerate exactly what's available on the record under oath in order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Okay. There's been an objection to the motion. All those in favor of placing the bill onto the session agenda, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. We're still in motions. No others? Okay, we are now in the area of the second reading that we require. We have 4 bills that require committee of the whole, followed by a bill that has been placed at the bottom of the second reading file that does not require, but it's at the bottom, so we'll go ahead and address it tomorrow, okay? So the administration will not be available until tomorrow for the committee of the whole, so therefore we stand in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we'll start up with bills 231-38, 262, 205, and 228. Okay? All right. We're in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.